Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B, and I'm here to talk about a record called Axis Bold as Love by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I just happened to come across this at the library the other day, and Jimi Hendrix is certainly a person who's been involved in my music consciousness pretty much as long as I have it. Back when I was in sixth grade, we had to do reports on an important Black or African American musician for Black History Month. And the one kid in my class who knew how to play guitar at the time, Scott, he did his report on Jimi Hendrix. And since then, I've known who Jimi Hendrix is, but I've only really known what I think of as the big three songs, All Along the Watchtower, Purple Haze, and Hey Joe. And I think since then, I've also heard the song Red House because I went to a little recording studio to record a few of my songs I did professionally called the Red House Music Academy. But I was curious about listening to Jimi Hendrix in the form of a full studio album, especially because two of those big songs, All Along the Watchtower and Hey Joe, they aren't songs he wrote. I mean, you could argue that he basically rewrote All Along the Watchtower. He took it from an 8 out of 10 song by Bob Dylan to a 10 out of 10 song with his musical rearrangement. But regardless, I wanted to listen to Jimi Hendrix in full album form. And since I stumbled across this album, here we go. So let's talk about the tracks on this one, because it clearly starts out as a bit of a concept record. The first track is just called EXP, I assume short for Experience, and it's basically an experimental track. We hear an interview with an alien, I believe voiced by Hendrix, and then he uses his guitar to create some distortion sounds. Then we have track number 2 called Up from the Skies. People have interpreted this one as continuing the alien theme, though I would not have picked up on that if I had not looked at what other people were saying, but it makes sense. But, you know, it's not going out of its way to sound outer spacey. It's not including weird synths or anything. It's Jimi Hendrix playing a really easygoing folky blues. But if you look at the lyrics, there's kind of a low-key protest song. He's singing from the perspective of an alien. And I guess because the alien has this distance, he's not too inflamed or angry, but he's like, I don't get what's going on your Earth, man. I heard you got some of your family living in cages, tall and cold. So have to assume that's a protest against the prison system. Track number 3 is called Spanish Magic Castle. This one is a bit of a bigger sound, thanks to Noel Redding's bass being filtered through what's called apparently Octavia pedals. And it's the opposite of the last song, subject-wise, too. So whereas Up from the Skies was about, I guess, quite a surreal subject, bringing in the perspective from an alien that sounded like easygoing folk music, Spanish Castle Magic tries to bring this real psychedelic energy to what was apparently just a nightclub on the outskirts of Seattle. Jimi Hendrix really found a way to make this, place in our real world seem magical. Track number 4 is called Wait Until Tomorrow. I thought it had a bit of a Doobie Brother feel, and it's one of the more liked songs on the album. It's dark, but in a folky, kind of silly way. I guess it's most fun if you look at the lyrics yourself. And track number 5, Ain't No Telling. It feels like a slightly weaker continuing of Wait Until Tomorrow, a bit more of a jam rock feel to it. And I feel like it almost puts a plot twist on Wait Until Tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to spoil Wait Until Tomorrow. So spoiler, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Wait Until Tomorrow is about this guy and this girl who are going to elope. And he's saying, okay, we can wait until tomorrow. But then and tomorrow her father comes out with the shotgun and kills him. And I feel like Ain't No Telling, if it is a sequel to Wait Until Tomorrow, kind of suggests this plot twist that maybe the girlfriend was in on the shooting. I don't know. That's kind of what I got from it. But anyway, that goes into a beautiful song, another highlight of the record called Little Wing. This one does a lot with minimal lyrics. Supposedly it was influenced by another great songwriter, Curtis Mayfield, perhaps particularly his famous song, People Get Ready, because you can hear a little chimey sound in there. The song seems to be about the idea of having a protector who can reliably be turned to give gifts. When I looked up Hendrix's explanation of the song, he broadly cites his indigenous heritage. I believe he's of Cherokee descent, so I'm going to be a bit careful here, but I understand that a sort of common theme in a lot of indigenous cultures across North America is the sort of centrality of the exchange of gifts. And this professor I had Aaron Mills, who came from an Anishinaabe perspective, he said, what differentiates a sort of North American indigenous perspective on gifts from what seems like the European's perspective is that gifts are not an exchange. If someone gives you a gift, you don't feel you owe them another gift back. Rather, the universe is built upon different people giving different gifts when they are best able to. So it's not ungrateful that Jimi Hendrix is just saying, accepting all these gifts from Little Wing and not giving anything back, because I guess Jimi Hendrix is then giving a gift to us in turn through his song. I don't like track number 7 as much. It's called If 6 Was 9. The lyrics are kind of like Moonshadow by Cat Stevens. And even though they're a bit sillier and maybe even bring in a bit of politics, the song just sounds like a bit of a boring jam to me. And it somehow ends up being the longest song on the record. Track number 8 is called You Got Me Floating. This is a simple psychedelic love song. I don't think there's anything too special about it, but it's one of the more beautiful vocal performances on the record, and also the backup vocals are pretty nice as well. Track number 9 is called Castles Made of Sand. Similar to Up From the Skies, this one has very dark subject matter, but it's sung in a very easygoing style. I thought of it in relation to the Meatloaf song written by Objects in the Rearview Mirror May Appear Closer Than They Are. Basically, both are retellings of the traumas of Meatloaf and Jimi Hendrix's childhood, respectively, alcoholism in his family, his brother being separated from him by child services, but they're separated by these metaphors. So in the Meatloaf song, it's this grandiose kind of silly expression, but a way of talking about constantly looking back. And in Jimi Hendrix's song, it's a way of trying to filter out the pain through a spiritual lens. Everything is made of sand, everything fades through the sea, all pain will go away. Track number 10 is called She's So Fine. This is interesting. One thing I hadn't thought about until a few years ago is that these Jimi Hendrix records, they're technically credited not to Jimi Hendrix, but to the Jimi Hendrix Experience. He had this band with 2 other guys, Noel Redding on the bass and Mitch Mitchell on the drums. So on this song, it's pretty much just a Noel Redding song that I believe Jimi Hendrix is singing backup. So track number 10, it's called She's So Fine. Lyrically, it feels like a parody of a lot of songs about women being beautiful. The subject is described with surreal images that are on the one hand cool, but have nothing to do with attractiveness, like having literal tree branches growing from her. Track number 11 is called One Rainy Wish. This is a pretty darn cool song because if you look at the lyrics and the way Hendrix sings, which is pretty nice by his standards, it sounds like a lullaby at first, but there's always this kind of weird guitar part playing. And then he suddenly gets aggressive sounding in the chorus, even if the lyrics remain peaceful. And it's interesting. We've seen Jimi Hendrix sing these fairly dark songs in a very easygoing way. And then by contrast, on One Rainy Wish, he manages to sing fairly loving subject matter in this intense kind of way. Track number 12 is called Little Miss Lover. This takes the sort of beautiful subject matter, aggressive playing thing to another level. It's just a very gritty performance. And I think with this one, the lyrics even show awareness of this contradiction between how the song sounds versus what it's about. It goes, would you believe, baby, I've been looking for a Sue that feels like you for some time. Excuse me while I see if the gypsy in me is right, if you don't mind. So on the one hand, it is a love song, but he is checking and he's saying, hey, I have these various traumas. I don't know with gypsies if he's drawing a parallel between sort of native identity and Roma identity or what, or it's just a loose word for traveler. But regardless, he's saying, look, I want to be a lover, but I do have some soul searching to do. And then finally, we get a very cool ending track called Bold as Love. Feels rewarding that the album has built up here. It certainly has its rock feel to it, but it also has a bit of a pop feel to it. It's kind of like Van Morrison with just a slight extra layer of electric guitar. And this song, as I've talked about with some of the previous ones, seems to be about the inseparability of contradictions. You know, we feel sensitive in close proximity to feeling anger. We feel strong in close proximity to feeling absurd. That's expressed in the very first lyric, anger, he smiles. So I don't know why, I have to assume the reason why I've been avoiding listening closely to Jimi Hendrix for so many years is after the good experience of listening to those first couple songs, I remember someone putting them on in a playlist in the background and it just felt kind of mellow, kind of jammy. The songs weren't staying in my head. And I guess the thing with Jimi Hendrix is there are 2 limitations to him. One is that he was not a good singer, or at least he didn't have the confidence to ultimately see himself that way. And on top of that, he really had this real gift for guitar. So even though some of the songs he writes could be beautiful in theory, him and his tiny band, the arrangements often put the most emphasis on getting the most kind of sounds out of the guitar, which sometimes mean the singing isn't as melodic as it could be, which would add an extra layer of richness to the track. Also, as I talked about in my recent video with the Doors, you have some musicians who they'll use as many instruments as possible, whatever they can get in the studio to make the song sound best. Whereas some of these bands are really committed to doing just what they can with the band. And sure, in the case of an electric band like this, they'll find different ways to distort the guitar. But again, sometimes these songs feel kind of rough around the edges, precisely because they're almost more committed to showing what cool things can Jimmy do with his guitar than how can we make the most beautiful song possible. That said, if one looks at the lyrics and listens to the melody under the surface, there's certainly a lot beautiful here. Bold as Love, One Rainy Wish, and Little Wing were particular standouts for me, and I will try and keep listening to them going down the road. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.